Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all the books that I've read in the month of November. Stay tuned. Okay, so I've read 14 books this month. For me that's pretty awesome. In fact, it's the most successful month of the year. Now I'm very happy about that, even though obviously I've been reading a lot of shorter books and novellas in order to get the challenge done as quickly as I can. Obviously I'm still going to be reading some longer stuff, and I'm going to be picking stuff that I want to read. But yeah, this is quite a challenge to get through 100 books. I do plan to aim to maybe finish it around May, June, but we'll have to wait and see. Now for this particular video, I've ordered the books from my least favourite to my most favourite. I have only got one 5-star, but it's my first 5-star for a while, so I'm actually very happy about that. And I'm also going to be talking about books that I've sort of reviewed already on previous videos, on catch-ups and with the readathon, the cryptid readathon. So I won't be going over those in too much detail. I'd rather just skim through those so that this video is not an hour long. So let's get going with the 14 books. Okay, first up we have my only 2-star read for the month. And after loving Dracula, such a horror classic by Bram Stoker, I was really hoping I would think more of The Lair of the White Worm. Now it had its moments of tension. Ending was kind of interesting in a hilarious way, but it is a bit of a mess. It's about this beautiful woman in the English countryside. There's an estate, there's a castle, but she may or may not be an ancient large white worm that is terrorizing the surroundings, where children go missing and animals go missing, according to the blurb. And there's this uncle and nephew that are reunited and move into this estate. There's this crazy guy in this castle. There's these women, the nephew falls in love with one of these girls, ends up marrying, although we know very little about that, or the love story, or the marriage, or anything else. In fact, it's to try and protect her, because there's a threat. The story is a mess. And those that have read the story, I'm sorry, you cannot deny that it is a bit of a mess. And one of my biggest problems with it is that it builds attention, and you seem like something's about to happen. Then the next moment they're all sitting around at dinner table or breakfast table or having a cup of tea or doing something and talking about the threat. And what can we do? And there's never any sort of resolution until right at the end, which is kind of entertaining in a ridiculous way. But yeah, for me the story was just all over the place. The characters were all over the place. You never really got to know them or like them, and it wasn't for me. It had its moments, like I say, that's why it's 2-star. I don't review a 1-star book, so you can give it a go, but it is nothing like Dracula by Bram Stoker. It is kind of sad, but it is just a very, 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 disappointing read for me. Okay, now for the 3-star read. So these were good. I would kind of recommend them. And the first one, being probably my least favorite, was Who Goes There by John Campbell. Now, this is the kind of inspiration behind the movie The Thing from John Carpenter, which is an absolute horror classic. And I kind of enjoyed it. It is about a research base who discovers a frozen alien body that had crash landed on the planet, and they decide to thaw it out with horrifying consequences. And if you know the movie, this is very close to the movie. Unfortunately, this does not have the dread and the tension and the paranoia and the absolute sense of messed up fear that you feel in the movie. It's kind of disjointed. The writing is good, but it's almost like it focuses on the wrong things. I mean, the setting is very well described, but the characters are poor. You don't really know characters from each other, and it jumps around, and so it's kind of, it doesn't have that terror value. There's no building of tension. And I suppose it doesn't help that I've seen the movie about 3-4 times, so I know what's going to happen. But yeah, there are some very, very tense moments in this little book. It's short, so it's worth a read. But yeah, it wasn't for me, and it's nothing like the movie. And if you haven't seen The Thing by John Carpenter, do yourselves a favour and go and scare yourselves silly by watching that movie. It is absolutely bloody terrifying. Okay, so that is Who Goes There by John Campbell, 3 stars. Okay, the next one is a book that very short book that I've talked about already, and it's a 3 stars, just a lot of fun, and that is Something in the Water, an Extreme Cryptid Tale by Eric Butler. And yeah, it's about 2 men sort of fighting over this lake house property, and this lake, and yes, there is something in the water, and it is terrifying. The story is gory, it's fun, but it is kind of weak on the characters and the storyline. It could have done better if it was a longer novella or novel, but still, it's fun for what it does, and then it's just a little bit of blood and gore and fun. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you just got nothing that much better to do. It's worth just dipping into and having a read. It's quick and easy. So that is There's Something in the Water, an Extreme Cryptid Tale. Okay, now we're moving into a couple of books that were 3.5 star for me. Could possibly have been 4 star, but there was just something that let me down. And the first one is Peter Straub's Full Circle. Peter Straub. Now this was creepy, it was atmospheric. I've spoken about it already. Very, very basically, it's about a mother. She's lost her daughter under tragic circumstances. She gets away from her husband, who is overbearing, and a house calls out to be bought. She buys a house to gain independence, and the house is haunted. Now yeah, this was creepy, it was atmospheric, it was unsettling at times. I kind of enjoyed it, but it was, oh, and there's a creepy kid, don't forget the creepy kid, but it was also very slow burn, it drags in places, and that put me off a little bit. And yeah, I'm not so sure about the ending either, but still, Peter Straub, Full Circle. And also, if you're going to read this author, I would recommend that you go straight for Ghost Story. I gave it 5 stars in my youth, and it is well worth a read, even though it is very slow burn as well. It is worth it because the ending is incredible. Okay, next we have Below by Laurel Hightower, and I gave a little bit of a review on this as well. So badly wanted to love this novella. I heard so many amazing things on booktube about this novella, and I wanted to enjoy it. Don't know why that is. You hear these positive reviews, and then you think you have to enjoy it. You want to enjoy it, like everyone else. But that's not how it works sometimes. And for a long portion of the novella, it was going to be 4 or 5 stars for me. It is about this woman. I'm going to give a quick version because I've done a review already. It's about a woman who, after an accident, goes down into a crevice, or after a truck plows down, goes to save the stranger, goes down into the ravine, and it is terrifying at times. It's very creepy, it's very unsettling, and also inside this woman's head, she's not quite right with her relationship with her ex-husband. There's a lot to love about this, but the ending let me down. I don't know why, maybe I missed something, maybe you can explain, but the ending it was too full of unanswered questions, loose ends, it didn't tie in. What happened here? What happened here? Nothing gets answered. So for me, it was a 3.5 star, mainly because of the first part of the book. The first 3 quarters of the book was freaking brilliant. So yeah, that's Below by Laurel Hightower. Okay, now we're coming into the books that I really enjoyed and I would really recommend to you, starting with 4 stars, and there's quite a lot of them. Starting off with Fear Me by Tim Curran. Now this is a crazy, wild, brutal, bloody, nasty, gory little novella set in a prison, maximum security prison, but it is so much fun. And what happens is that this scrawny little character, kind of nerdy, kind of geeky, kind of dorky, ends up in this maximum security prison. We don't know who he is, we don't know where he's come from, but there's just something about him. And when new prisoners that are tiny and weak end up in this place, they either end up being someone's play toy, or being hurt, worse than raped, murdered, or beaten up. And so soon some of the hard inmates, and now believe me, these inmates are brutal. This book is brutal. The dialogue is just frickin' unreal. It's so brutal. And some of them move in on this kid. And what happens to them? At night, when they're locked in their cell, they die horrible deaths. And the other inmates hear them scream. And so there's all sorts of things. And it turns out that it's something about this newcomer. Now, I'm not going to say too much more, except that I really loved this book. Even though as bloody and gory and nasty as it was super entertaining and fun and quick read. And the ending, it's almost like Lovecraftian-like, and it left me thoroughly satisfied. I think the reason I didn't give it 5 stars is just because it, at times, was a little bit repetitive, especially with the descriptions of the prison, of the surroundings, and just a tiny bit repetitive. And also the talk from the inmates, who are the hardest of the hard, sort of the big bastards in the world. And the constant talk about rape and murder, and just this makes Shawshank look like a daycare. And really it was just, but it was just a fun book, and I highly recommend it. That is Fear Me by Tim Curran. Okay, the next 4-star reviewed already, so I'm going to go through it quite quickly, and that is Wendy Go by Algernon Blackwood. Now, this is the first book I've read by this author, and it won't be the last. And it's 4 men going on a hunting trip, looking for a moose, and they run into trouble, kind of supernatural trouble. And it's very creepy, it's very eerie, it doesn't rely on blood and gore like a lot of the books I seem to be reading lately. But it's very unsettling, and a sense of paranoia around this campfire and these characters, and something's wrong, something's stalking them. I just love the story. He's such a gorgeous writer for a book that's pretty old, and I can't wait to read more from him at a later stage. So yeah, that's Wendy Go. Okay, my next 4-star read, and this took me by surprise, is more like a short story, a short novella, and it's called Crawl by Edward Lawn, who is also a fellow booktuber. I'm going to link him below, and this really was just a wonderful story. I'm going to read the blurb on Goodreads just quickly first. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You've been crippled and left for dead. There's something in the wood. It's coming. There's only one way. There's only one thing you can do. Crawl. Now this is incredible. The writing was just so good. I didn't expect it. I really just got so invested in this character, in what she's going through, and it was just so tense and at times so violent, and it's just different elements that come together in the story. And it gets very gory as well, and it's almost visceral. You're living in with this woman and feeling what she's feeling, and it's just a very effective short story, and I'd highly recommend it. And yeah, I'm going to read more from this author, and I highly recommend that you check out his channel, which I'll link below. But this was an awesome thing that I've read. I'm going to try and look out for his novels or novellas as well. And that is Crawl by Edward Lawn. Okay, the next one was a reread for me. On the first read I gave it 3 stars. This time around, Rosemary's Baby earned 4 stars. Now, most of you probably know the main thing around the story is that this wife gets pregnant from her husband. They live in this apartment block, and basically there are nasty devil worshipping Satanists, and it seems like everyone is conspiring against poor old Rosemary. as she was pregnant, everyone. And it's just a sense of paranoia and fear in this book, and tension that I maybe didn't notice as much in the first read, and in particular the ending. It's chilling, and it's very dark, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it the second time around. And I actually need to check out the movie. I don't even think I've watched the movie, Rosemary's Baby, but yeah, this is highly recommended, thoroughly enjoyable. Okay, the 10th book I've also reviewed, so I'm going to go very, very quickly here. The Haunted Forest Tour by James Moore, and I think there was another writer, but basically this forest pops up from nowhere in the middle of this little town, and there's creatures in the forest, just kill everyone, destroy the town, and some years later the forest becomes a tourist attraction where you can run on an armoured truck or armoured vehicle through the forest to see the monsters, and there are lots of monsters. Well, what could possibly go wrong? It's fun, it's gory, it's wild, it's just action-packed, and just the kills are so creative. I think I said that last time, so let's move on. Okay, and I've reviewed the next one as well, which is 10 Days of Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. Let me just read my Goodreads review that I left on Goodreads, just to give you a recap. Disturbing, horrifying, nauseating, and yet at the same time utterly compelling. There were times I felt sick to my stomach, but this is such an interesting story, and it is. Set in such a fascinating dystopian world, and it is. The ending is truly shocking. A futuristic world where cannibalism is allowed. 10 Days of Flesh. Okay, now we're turning to two books that are 4.5 stars for me. The first being The Day It Rained Forever by Ray Bradbury. Now, this man is such a genius. There's not a bad book by him that I've ever read, and this collection is absolutely wonderful. It's not perfect. There are one or two stories that weren't so great for me, but pretty much all of them kind of left a mark. He's just got away with words, and he touches emotions and feelings that you have. Huge range from sadness to melancholy to longing to beauty to terror to and he captures these moments in time in his stories. You know, he captures normalcy and makes it magical. He does all these things in his stories, and I've said before, he's just a genius with words. He's just so poetic. And really, if you haven't read Ray Bradbury, I would start with Something Wicked This Way Comes, but his short story collections are wonderful, and this was very good. Now, there are two standouts in this for me. The first being a story called Here There Be Tigers. This very quickly is an astronaut landing on a planet, and they're there, just like typical Earth, want to plunder everything. They're there to basically get the resources, to drill into the planets and just take everything, take. But this particular planet is sentient, it thinks, and it welcomes the men, and what they think comes true. So the beautiful landscape of grass, if they think they're thirsty, rain falls on them to quench their thirst. And so yeah, they're welcome to this planet, and all of them accepted except for this one man who is a bit of an arsehole. He just wants to take them. But I'm not going to tell you anything more, but this is a wonderful, wonderful story. Very beautiful, very thought-provoking in terms of the subject matter, and yeah, I really loved it. The next one is kind of quite terrifying, and it's called Perchance to Dream. A man crash lands on an alien planet and finds out that he's fine. He's only one. Sends out a distress signal, and they say they'll be there in 6 days. So he's like, no problem. Got enough food and drink in my spacesuit and everything for 6 days. I can last. As soon as he goes to sleep, he discovers that he's not alone. That there are these kind of ghosts or creatures, not creatures, some spirits that used to survive on this planet long, long ago, that have been waiting for something living, waiting for flesh to take over so they can resume their hostilities. Those two warring things. And they use his brain and they use his body. And so he tries not to sleep because it is tormenting and driving him mad. And I'm not going to say anything else about that. The story does go to different places, very interesting twist at the end. But yeah, I absolutely love the story. And there are so many absolutely beautiful stories in this particular collection, including the title story, The Day It Rained Forever, which is the first story. It's just so beautiful. Sad, beautiful, and happy, and everything at the same time. Do yourself a favor, read Ray Bradbury. Okay, the next book that was so nearly a 5-star for me was Lost Souls by Poppy C. Bright, and I did review this book already. But let me just recap quickly. Yeah, it's a vampire tale, but it's so much more than that. It is very dark, just straight off the bat. It's just some of the darkest, most gruesome, most debauched, sort of sexual, erotic, bloody stuff that I've ever read. And sometimes sex and violence and blood and gore all kind of mingle together. Delightful, but it's just so well written. Very gothic and set in New Orleans, and with such an interesting array of characters. There are these 3 vampires, younger vampires, that are completely debauched and have no humanity in them. They're just there for blood and pleasure. You got an older, more old school vampire. You got a lost boy who doesn't know his past. He's called Nobody, and he doesn't know where he comes from, and he doesn't know who he is, or maybe what he is, and so he runs away from home. And then you got a band. You got a band called Lost Souls, and all these characters kind of come together in interesting ways. And it's a brilliant book. Why did I not give it 5 stars? I'm not so sure, really, to be honest. But I think it was just that some of the writing was a little bit, I think, a 16 or 17-year-old me, or maybe when I was going through a goth phase, or I would have appreciated it more. Maybe a little bit like Anne Rice. If I pick her up now, I might not appreciate her as much as I did when I was younger. But still, it was an absolutely fabulous story. Very dark and warning, very graphic warning. But yeah, I enjoyed it. That is Lost Souls. Okay, we finally come to my 5-star read for the month. And now, people, this was a big surprise for me. I did not see it coming. And that is Fluke by James Herbert. This is the same James Herbert that wrote Rats and Slugs. I did not expect what I read in this book. He's known for his all-out horror. This is more like kind of an adventure, thriller, and dark thriller. It just blew me away, and it was a breath of fresh air. If you want to talk about something that is a sort of a what is it called? When you've read too much horror and you want to just take a breath and cleansing your palate, that's what I wanted to say. Then this book is just absolutely incredible. It's still dark, and it is basically a story about a dog, and it's told from the perspective of a dog, starting from a puppy all the way to adulthood. And he has this conscious knowledge that he used to be human. And this comes out sometimes at the wrong times. But you're seeing his world, this dog. Okay, so basically from the pound, get various owners. And of course it's a stray dog and other dogs and other creatures that he meets along the way. And it sounds weird, but you don't have to be a dog lover to appreciate this. It's almost like a strange coming of age journey, magical journey kind of book. It is not a horror. It is like an adventure, magical adventure. The stuff that he has to go through can be sad. Sometimes it's really moving. Sometimes it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's very violent and very dark. So there is a full array of different emotions that I felt reading this book, and the ending was superb in my opinion, and it is thought-provoking, and it is something different, almost philosophical. I'm not going to go too far into that, but yeah, this is just a wonderful read, and maybe it's because I've been reading so much horror and extreme horror this was just so fun to read and so awesome to get through. And this is 5 stars. That's James Herbert Fluke. Okay everyone, so that's my November wrap up. I hope you enjoyed that. Tell me which of these books you've read. How would you rate them? Of course, we all have different opinions, so be gentle. But yeah, speak to me in the comments down below. And if you like my content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Tomorrow I'll be giving my December TBR, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.